Welcome back to Morning Express, and in case you're joining us now, a quick reintroduction of the panel that we have here this morning discussing our political point. We have Professor Wajakoya, Philip Magal, and Barack Muluka with us. And just before we took the break, the question that we were asking is whether we need to increase the number of, or rather decrease the members of parliament as per a proposal given by Third Way Alliance leader Ekuru Aukot, and should the number of members of parliament be reduced? And I'll just read some of the comments that are coming through via Twitter and keep them coming. We've got Peter Ochungo, MD, who says simply yes. We have Office Econ, who says reducing the number of members of parliament is not a solution. Two systems of government is a burden. For example, two agriculture officers performing the same functions in one county. One represents central government, the other represents county government. We also have another tweet that says, I think it is time that we reduced our wage bill. All those members of parliament are not doing this Kenya any service. And let me start with you, Barack Muluka, on that particular proposal, and not just the reduction of members of parliament, but there are a number of proposals that have been floated on amending the constitution. We also have the Kamket bill that is currently being debated, of having a very powerful prime minister and reduced powers of a president and no deputy president, but we'll come to that. But starting with the members of parliament, would this be a solution for Kenya, despite the fact that it seems we still have the same heads, there, we still have the same members of parliament?
You see, it's not that we have the same members of parliament, it's that we are the same society that we are.
So what do we need to change the society?
The people we are talking about are our representatives. And whatever traits we see in them, you can go back to the society and you will find that those traits are there. That's why they are called our representatives. They represent us. If you were to take them through a laboratory process, you'd find that they have got the same qualities like ourselves, and therefore you would prove that that is who we are. When you look at Kenya, you look at the National Assembly, you look at the Senate, there is overrepresentation. We are far too many. And you can ask the question, why are we overrepresented? And it's because there's a certain element of greed, there's a certain element of narrow nationalism that goes right back to the village, that now each village may want to have its own member of parliament. And you see this same thing replicating itself within county government, where we are again overrepresented. We don't need 47 counties in this country. We don't need the number of MCAs that we have, the number of women county representatives that we have, the senators and so on. But it's also boiling down to one thing, that government is itself a gravy train. It's a place which everybody wants to go into. When I started working in this country for the first time in 1983, when I left the University of Nairobi, and I went to work in broadcasting as a producer of radio and TV programs at the Voice of Kenya, government was a place that few of us wanted to go into. The private sector looked more lucrative. That was where people wanted to work. Today, everybody wants to go into government, because into public sector, public service, because that is where the gravy is. You look at the appointments that have just been made the other day, and you are now even having some new one from nowhere, chief administrative secretaries. You don't know where this has come from. I'm wondering what Mr. Okoitio Mutata is still doing. Perhaps he's very soon going to zero in on that. And we have got to rationalize public service everywhere.
Okay. Wajakoya, Professor?
I've been an advocate of federalism, given my experiences outside this country. 26 years, both in UK and US, and I've seen how systems work. I've also been an advocate of emergence of new states in Russia. It is states that broke after Gorbachev and whatever, and then been part of those of the constitutional writings mechanism and devolution. The issue of 47 counties, I'll agree with him, we don't need counties in this country. We need to revert back to the former provinces and have states. States and then counties within states, so that we have governors, a governor who is governing Western Kenya, for example, with Bungoma, Kakamega, and Busia being counties, so that we can devolve power, and that will bring in county systems, like county parliament, as we have, but at a larger extent, giving more powers to the counties to negotiate on their economic activities with foreign countries, rather than deconstructing the whole thing within one Ministry of Foreign Affairs, giving a county a voice. So going into, like in Switzerland, for example, where we have cantons, where each canton is given an autonomy, autonomy, where a canton can actually negotiate with a foreign country to bring in development. Now, if you look at this system that we have today, what difference does it make even if you have 9 MPs? What you have now is a concrete conglomerate of greedy sycophants who sing the song of somebody for them to be appointed, like what you saw in Western Province the other day. Was it yesterday or the day before yesterday? When people have ganged up to say that we now need a vice president from here. That kind of politics, I don't want to be part of it. Will never be part of it. And even if Uhuru appointed me today to the cabinet, I'll turn that down. Because what kind of mediocres are you going to sit with? To chart the way forward for what? They will even sit for you. But we need states. We need a federal government with one president, like it's done probably in the US in comparison to...
But what difference will it make when we come up with all those systems when we still have the same people who possibly are there for wrong reasons?
The likes of Muluka here, I would be very much be willing to work under him as a governor.
And that's why I even asked the question earlier on, why aren't you in politics?
Yeah.
Why aren't you...
Yeah, that's one reason why they cannot even look at people like us, because they know that we shall not agree with their mediocre policies. I'm sure that is true. And if it is that I'm denying a job to be given, let them stay with their jobs. The mediocrity and the philosophy of these people is what I can't work with.
All right. Philip,
my
reduction of members of parliament?
My take is a bit different. As much as initially I was against the devolved units, Kenya being a small country, of course we cannot compare ourselves to the US, Russia, or Canada. We're a very small country, and therefore a unitary system would have worked perfectly well. But then again, we have to remember that this is a country that is still growing. The population is growing exponentially day by day. As much as I do agree that, in fact, we do have over-representation, that in fact the wage bill should be contained, I still think we should keep what it is that we do have. Because in another 5 years, there is no need of amending our constitution to reduce these people. Then in another 5 years, we argue that, in fact, we do need to increase the numbers.
But evidently the numbers are not working for us. They're not making the system any more efficient. If anything, they're literally depleting the coffers.
They are. But then again, as Barack Muluka pointed out, our representatives are our faces. They are representative of who we are, such that even if we were to reduce the numbers to an agreeable number,
we just reduce the number of pockets.
Yes, we'll just be reducing the number of our faces in the House. The type, the shape, the quality of representation would still remain the same.
So does that mean then we are left desperate as a nation to a point where we cannot move from where we are? Barack, you've mentioned that it's a reflection of the society. So are you saying that regardless of who we put there, that system will not change?
You see, we have got to begin by addressing the ethical pillars of society, because it's eventually a question of our software. What are we? Where are our ethical and moral pillars? We have to ask, for example, here in the media, remember the last time I was here, I was talking about agenda setting. And perhaps what you are doing now is part of it, that you are making a wake-up call to all of us to start asking ourselves where we are, how we have found ourselves here. We have got to look at the academy and ask ourselves what kind of attitudes and training we are giving people. As people train, are they looking forward to the opportunity when they are going to join the army of eaters? It's a hyenic kind of society, and is that where you want to go? You go to the shrines in this country, and you find that there are also other jungles where we have witnessed people fighting completely in holy clocks and all that, and chairs are flying left, right, and center. It's boiling down to the same thing. So we have got to go back to the moral and ethical pillars of society and begin interrogating ourselves and moving towards a more value-driven society.
Professor, how do we get to that value-driven society when people like yourself have already said that even if you are given the job, because of the mediocrity, you would not take it? Yet, a position of leadership is a position of privilege, it's a position of influence, hopefully to change for the better.
I don't think whether I want to be in that category. I'd rather be a parking boy like I was before, when I was a street kid and I grew up as a grave digger, and I graduated into security guard, and I'm self-made.
He should go there. On the contrary, Gitonga, he should go there. You know, even in hell, in Satan's hell, my grandmother used to say, you need your good person there. There's that good person who will tell you there where you are.
At least give a moral compass.
Yeah. Look at the governments of Malaysia, for example. Malaysia, when Malaysia became independent from Britain, the Malayans were taken to Britain. That was part of their accord, to go and study. And they went every year, 20, 10, 20. And Botswana took the same trend. And those are the people who went back and built Malaysia into a tiger economy, because they had been outside the country and they knew what it worked and how it worked. And I'm not saying that every one of us should go out.
But Jomo Kenyatta went out even before.
Yes, but Jomo did very
independence.
Good. Jomo did very good, because if you looked at him, despite the fact that land grabbing was there, Kenyan economy was at par with the British. If you look in terms of monetary value, a shilling was equivalent to a pound, and it was even higher than a pound to some extent. If you look at a healthcare system and educational system under Kenyatta administration, Cuba had to fly in to look at how wonderful Kenya
but that doing. Was not Kenyatta. That was the momentum. Colonial days that was still rolling. It was not Kenyatta.
Yes,
but the question would be how long he sustained it as president.
Until he died. Yes.
I don't think so.
He left healthcare, which was affordable and available at the doorstep.
All right, so let's answer the question then of what ails us and how do we change and go back to that tiger economy? I mean, at some point, we're even ahead of Singapore. Right now, we are miles away from Singapore.
Adding on what he said, and I'm just extending a footnote on it, and look at my friend on the right, who is from West Pokot, the remotest part of the world, who has also been outside the country in one of the universities as a self-centered, sponsored student who worked, went to university for a term, went back to work, went back until he finished and he came back. You can look at him. His topography kind of attitude and looking at things is different. But what I'm trying to say here is, we can never be holier than thou. I cannot sit here wearing this suit, smelling good, and preaching what I ought not to be preaching. Be who you are. Look at the kind of ministers that were appointed recently. Let's start by that. Go back and look into their backyard. Of what value will they add on the decaying economy that you have today? Are they not just going in there, being flanked by their tribesmen?
I'm still looking for the question of how we are going to change that.
The best way to do this
identified the problem.
Is education. For example, corruption is a very simple thing. If I was the president of this country, I will end corruption in my first term.
How would you do that?
Let's blend corruption into a curriculum, into a content-based curriculum, and start teaching small kids right from the inception in that corruption is bad.
You don't need that.
And then let me just finish.
Professor, you don't need that. You don't need to go to school. It's going to take us forever. But you need just to start jailing the thieves.
I was coming to that. Maybe the Jerry Rawlings system was good, where he shot about 6 presidents, and that was a lesson that Ghanaians learned from, and Ghanaians have not gone to that route. But I'm not going to take that one. I'm talking of doing it Yes, whereby we teach our children that corruption is bad. We teach our children that when you enter the bus and the bus is full, you don't sit in it. Teach our kids that when you go into a bus where a driver is driving faster, you stop him by shouting rather than sitting in and then letting the man do what he wants to do. It's through education, through punitive punishing, not this issue of having cocoon kind of anti-corruption. Anti-corruption what? How do we call them? They should be called
commission.
Commission. They should call it corruption commission, not anti-corruption commission, because they have come out with nothing. Let us have a president who can stand, and when he talks and when he gives an order, orders are followed. How can I sit with the ministers whose characters has been painted? I'll fire them and I'll ask the police to pick them up and put them in court.
Then again, you'll be accused of taking the law into your own hands.
No, that to some extent, dictatorship is good to some extent, especially when it comes to transshaping society. Look at what has happened in Singapore. What has happened in Malaysia? Look at what has happened in Botswana.
But isn't dictatorship now taking us back to... Well, let me hear from Magal.
Let me just point this out. There is no silver bullet to take care of this problem. What it is, corruption is not going anywhere anytime soon, irrespective of who becomes president in the next 10 years.
Why is that?
This is something that is ingrained in our psyche as Kenyans. Kenyans would rather vote a thief. Kenyans would rather beat up a chokora for stealing a phone and vote in a person
but
who stole
let me just take you back a little bit and remind you during the time of Mishuki,
yes,
at some point,
yes,
when he was dealing with the transport industry, Kenyans had reached a point where they were literally arresting policemen who were asking for bribes. So when we say it is ingrained in our culture, what is it that he did that changed that culture for that period of time?
Just compare that with immediately Michuki left that office. Yes, he'd implemented very nice changes in the sector. But what became of it? Did we carry it over? Do we still have it?
But doesn't that mean that if given the right leadership, then we can possibly follow what we lack?
Yes,
we do have a very good constitution, which to me is the greatest leader in this country. Makes provisions for vetting of our leaders, makes provisions for voting in people who are representative of our values. We have values, we have principles, we have integrity enshrined within the Constitution. And this should be the guiding principle. Under each and every chapter in our Constitution, we do have guiding principles which should inform how it is that office bearers discharge their duties and, in fact, how it is that they are appointed into those offices. But so see what became of the vetting process. See what has become of the legislature. We are now questioning the judiciary after they made very bro-raising determinations last week. Meaning, therefore, that personally, if I was asked, then I would have gone for a very radical proposal, which would be to do away with the universal suffrage, saying that anybody with an ID, anybody above 18 years should have the right to vote. To me, is what really is the start of our problems. Most of these people don't pay taxes. Most of them have not been to school. Most of them...
So what would then be the solution?
We could have a college system like what is there in the U.S. The Americans know that they cannot give such an important function to all and sundry. Some people don't even exercise their thought as to whom they are voting. They just wake up one morning, decide this is a person. I mean, I've seen this person posters all over the place. Why not vote him in? And that is our problem. We need to question, really, is the universal suffrage system the best? Why are the Chinese progressing despite of the fact that they don't hold elections? But then this would be very radical and definitely unacceptable by most.
All right, Barak, your thoughts on that? Because China, if you use it as an example, has also been accused of their president being a dictator, and that is what we thought with democracy we're trying to get away from. But it looks like some say that what we need is a benevolent dictator for us to at least be streamlined.
We are in a very confusing environment. And some of the things that Magak is saying may sound very radical and extreme, but there's also some very serious value and truth in them. That when you look at one vote in the hand of an informed individual who knows why he or she is voting, and you look at another 10,000 votes that are being influenced purely by emotion and instinct. They are being driven by the consideration that we are this tribe, and this is our tribesman. We are from this village, and this is our fellow villager, and so we are voting for him or her regardless.
Right.
That places us in a very difficult situation, because that kind of vote is like a loaded gun in the hands of some demented individual, and what he or she is going to do with that gun, you can never tell. Conversely, it doesn't quite start sounding rational to say, lock out all these people. Yet when you look at even Western liberal democracy as we know it, that was actually where it started. Universal suffrage is something that is fairly recent. You read of philosophers such as Jean-Jacques Rousseau writing about the social contract, and he's talking about the Constitution of Geneva, which he says was the best constitution and that should be adopted by everybody in the world. And you will find that that Constitution of Geneva in that age placed the voter's card in the hands of propertied white males, that women, blacks, slaves, and mad people were not allowed to vote. Here, even a mad person has got an identity card and they will vote. I don't know at what point the madness ends. They go to the polling station and vote, and at what point the madness is over. But the bottom line in all this, gentlemen, is the person at the very top. Harry Truman of the United States had a plaque on his door that said, "The buck stops here." If the person at the very top decides that he or she is going to transform this country, it will begin working. If we had a Michuki at the very top, the things that we are talking about that Michuki had begun doing would work. But you sit with these fellows, you lament about them, you come to the public rostrums, and you say that even in State House, they are there. You say even in the office of the president, they are there, and you wine and dine with them. Your lamentations count for nothing.
All right, Professor Wajakoya, we're running out of time. Your wrapping thoughts on if we sorted out the top, would that solve our problems?
I think the best thing I want to say today, and let me praise myself and say amen.
Amen.
Is the philosophy acquired from the white man and the religion. I know Christians will condemn me forever. The philosophies we acquired which changed our mindset, not to think in the reverse. But I'll leave that for another day. The back lies with Uhuru Kenyatta today. He's a young man. He's been in the diaspora. He's a man whom we can look at and trace his history from the time he came back from the diaspora, of all, with whatever he did up to the time he was appointed to the tourist board. He was perfectly in order. He's a man, in my opinion, who got everything made for him. And therefore, there's no need of him being corrupt. Let Uhuru Kenyatta be given a chance and let him come out as a man. I'm not saying he's a woman. And streamline this country.
All right.
I would really like to work with this man if at all he can streamline the country and get the likes of Michuki, the likes of the current Minister for Interior when he was Minister for Education. It was a mistake for Kenyatta to remove that man from education and put him in the Interior.
But he's the same man.
He's the same man, but I'm just saying it.
Okay.
If Uhuru can come up and say, this is what we want, this is the legacy I want to leave, run away from this Jubilee mediocre of where Jubilee government is now trying to copy the Chinese Communist Party momentum and bring it here so that you can suppress the country, suppress the police, suppress the judiciary, suppress any people who have good thoughts for this country. Then he will rise up. Look at what happened, for example, recently, where somebody's business is just destroyed immediately when the case is still in court. I'm talking of Siemens, and I'm not going to go into details. Let the president rise up let him take the momentum. If he's willing to get hardcore advisors like us, let him have us, and the country will run.
Philip, your wrapping thoughts?
For me, the rule of law is what will save us from the quagmire in which we do exist right now. We have very good laws. We have very good provisions in our laws, in the Constitution. We should only allow them, give them room to mature. We should put them into force. We should allow our law enforcement agencies to do their job. We've gotten to a point whereby now, before a police can arrest anybody, they have to ask, is this so-and-so's son? The president as well has been given lots of powers, and he should not misuse those powers to scuttle the efforts of the Anti-Corruption Commission, the efforts by the judiciary, the efforts by the legislature. If only the president and each one of us in this country would let the rule of law prevail, if only that tout who is flouting traffic regulations could be arrested and charged, if only I and the man watching us today or the woman watching us today would refuse to give a bribe, would report to the police whenever a crime is committed, and if only that policeman would then go out there and arrest that individual, we would have a working nation.
Thank you, gentlemen. Philip Magal, Professor Wajakoya, and Barack Muluka for joining us this morning on The Political Point. Thank you very much. And also for you at home or wherever you're watching.